Hello, I'm Jason Ruiz, City Hall reporter at the Long Beach Post. Welcome to another one of the Post debates featuring candidates for the city's 5th City Council district today. This district has arguably undergone some of the bigger changes after redistricting. What used to be a, specifically East Long Beach district now includes Los Cerritos, Cal Heights, Bixby Knolls in the west, and Lakewood Village and other communities on the east side of the Long Beach Airport. It's one of several debates that we're hosting before the November 8th election. For more info and coverage that we've had and will have, especially like head-to-head comparisons of candidates that are left in the race, make sure to visit our elections homepage at lbpost.com/elections. Co-hosting with me today is Anthony Pignataro, and over the next 45 minutes or so, we'll be asking questions of the candidates for this city council district, who are Ian Patton and Megan Kerr.
Hello, I'm Anthony. So here are some ground rules for today's debate. Each candidate's going to have 2 minutes to answer a question. There's a timer on the screen that the candidates and the moderators can see. Please finish your thought and wrap up quickly so we can avoid interrupting you. If a candidate is attacked directly, they'll have a 1-minute opportunity to respond. They will also have an opportunity for a 2-minute closing statement. But first, they'll have 2 minutes to introduce themselves to the viewers. We'll go alphabetically, so let's start with Megan Kerr.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. My name is Megan Kerr, and I currently serve as the president of the Board of Education for the Long Beach Unified School District. I've been honored to serve on that board for the last 8 years. I was born and raised here in Bixby Knolls, raised my family here, and continue to serve my community in multiple ways. In 2014, I chose to run for school board because I had been working actively in the community and in our schools for the previous 11 years. I have a long record of service in this community. I actually received a community service award as a young person from Mayor Ernie Kell in the Press Telegram when I was 20 for doing outreach work to those who were unhoused here in Long Beach. So in service to my community, I ran for school board and have had the honor to serve the Bixby Knolls, Cal Heights, and Los Cerritos area, as well as everything to our northernmost borders of our city, serving 108,000 constituents and 70,000 students in Long Beach Unified. The 5th district, as newly drawn, is an incredibly important district, and it deserves someone who is experienced, deserves someone who has worked with the community, been in service to the community for a very long time. And that's the record that I'm running on. I continue to be engaged in nonprofits in this area and looking to continue to serve this new district and really unify people who don't necessarily see themselves as connected. So I have a long collaborative history of working with folks in the region and working with neighborhood associations, and looking forward to continue that work as the council member for the 5th district. I welcome the opportunity to have questions, to have conversation and talk about the issues that are facing not only this 5th district, but our city as a whole. Thank you for the opportunity today.
Thank you, Megan. Ian? Did we lose Ian?
It looks like it.
All right.
We'll give him a minute to rejoin.
Okay.
Well, it's pretty good. We made it through 3 of these before this happened, right? So I guess we'll fill some space here. The election is about, by the time you guys watch this, it'll probably be about 4 weeks away. I believe some of the voting centers, depending on if they're 11-day or 4 days, will be, I think the 11 days open on October 29th, and then obviously the 4 days, I think, open on the 4th. But because in California, every registered voter gets a vote by mail ballot, you don't have to vote in person if you don't want to, or you can do what I do, which is I fill out my vote by mail ballot and drop it off in person, so I can kind of get like that hybrid experience.
That's good. I think Ian is rejoining us.
Here we go.
Yeah, I think I lost internet in my office here for a moment, very bizarrely, so I apologize for that.
No worries. Megan just gave her 2-minute intro, so if you want to go ahead and give us your introduction, please.
Thank you, Long Beach Post. Appreciate being here. The reason I'm running for the 5th City Council District is because I care so deeply about this city and this community in the 5th District that I grew up in and that I feel is under threat in a lot of ways. I am willing to make the sacrifice to run against the enormously powerful political machine in this city because we have so many desperate needs. We have rising crime, we have a sprawling homelessness crisis, and we have a system which is increasingly becoming dysfunctional because it is controlled by powerful special interests downtown. It's why 4 years ago, I founded the Long Beach Reform Coalition with a number of community activists. It's because we wanted to have the voice of the residents, small business owners centered on the agenda for City Hall. And we felt that increasingly that was not occurring. And we had policies which were taking money away from investment in our streets, in our parks, in our public safety, in our emergency services, and increasingly putting that money into the pockets of powerful interests downtown. And they basically buy and sell candidates. They fund campaigns through enormous independent expenditures. It's, in my opinion, a form of open bribery. And the result is that the residents are no longer being served. We have air which is not safe to breathe in this city, quite frankly. We have a public safety system which is faltering with the closure of Fire Station 9 and Community Hospital, and a police force which has gone down from 1,100 sworn officers to less than 750. So we have major issues to tackle, but I have such faith in this city. We are so resilient. Our strength is the people, the residents, and the small business owners of this city. And as a small business owner, I bring the skills to get us back on track, and that's what I intend to do.
Thank you very much, Ian. So we'll go with you for the first question. The 5th District was recently redrawn. It's very different than what it used to be. There are different communities now that have never been represented by the same council person. How will you balance those needs if you're elected?
Well, it's a great district. I can kind of identify with the entire district. It's very similar throughout to the area that I grew up in Bixby Knolls and Cal Heights. It's basically suburban. It's low density, single family zone neighborhoods. It's people that have quite a high quality of life, and they've earned that life. They've worked hard. They've raised their families. They've done a lot to invest in these communities. And what they see are similar issues now. They see a homeless crisis that was utterly unthinkable when I was a youngster in the 80s and the 90s in this city, that is sprawled throughout the city and throughout the 5th District. They are seeing an inability to have public safety because we only have basically one police officer at any given time per beat, which is 10,000 residents. And so they see increasing property crime. They see small businesses which are being smashed in and taking tens of thousands of dollars of losses and wondering whether they should even stay in this city, which has such a climate which is not favorable to small business. So this is a district that really cares. They've got roots. A lot of people are multi-generational. I'm a 3rd generation Long Beach resident, and they want to be able to stay. They want to be able to stay, but a lot of people are questioning that. And it's such a sad thing when you hear that. So I want to give them all a path to say, you know what, we can get back to the Long Beach that cares, that had a small town feel. And in this district in particular, whether it's Carson Park to the far east, the Plaza neighborhood, you know, the South Conant area, Lakewood Village, Bixby Knolls, Cal Heights, Los Cerritos, it's a long, expansive district. But if we hold town hall meetings, if we work together, we have a real commonality of interests, and I intend to represent them.
Thank you, Ian. Megan, same question.
Yes, thank you so much for the question. And I think your question originally is around balancing the needs of the east side of the district and the newer portions of the west. You know, when I've been knocking on doors and having conversations with folks about what district they're in for the first time. So the district that I live in was formerly the 8th district. So born and raised here, was either the 7th or the 8th. So really talking about the needs that we all have in common, and the things that I'm hearing are infrastructure. We want clean, safe, maintained parks. We want our trees trimmed, our streets repaved. And so the needs are similar. And because of how this 5th district is oriented, we have an opportunity to really bring people together. And so a lot of the work that I've done over the last 8 years is to be present to constituents. School board members don't have staff. So when folks have reached out and needed to talk, they talk to me, they call my cell phone, we meet in local coffee houses. I intend to continue to be that collaborative leader who meets with folks even when we don't agree. I think that's the thing, is we have to be able to have conversations with folks across the district who we may or may not see eye to eye on, and continue to do that work together to move the district forward. So it's about connecting with people, being present with people, bringing together potentially a neighborhood leadership council, the way that has been modeled in the 9th district, and bringing community groups together who have held their own events to have common events, and to invite them and to collaborate together for the best interest of the district. I was actually out yesterday at Hartwell Park at Lakewood Village Little League, watching what was going on and talking to folks out there. And they're the same issues that I was hearing on the doorsteps in Bixby Knolls last weekend. So being present to people, having collaborative relationships, and the ability to talk with people with whom you disagree to solve problems is the best way moving forward. And I intend to do that in relationship across this new 5th district.
Great. So last year, the city council approved the Globe Master Plan. And in passing that, the city said that this is going to transform that area, which, as you guys know, is along Cherry on the west side of the airport. It's going to transform it into a 21st century business district. What does that mean to you, Megan? You go first. Like, what when you hear 21st century business district, like what does that mean to you? What do you
Sure,
want?
it's an incredibly important property that Goodman owns and is looking to develop. And we know that Rocket Launch is taking over a big portion of that and has built that out. And I believe already has a couple hundred employees on that site as they continue to renovate the southernmost part of it. And so the work is about bringing in partners for the northern part of the plan that we feel are a good fit. We know, I think the mayor affectionately calls it Space Beach, but we're bringing in high-tech space industry businesses that support the jobs of the future. So our kindergartners right now are the class of 2035, and imagining what the jobs will be available in Long Beach to look like. We want to partner with businesses and bring in employers who share that vision of community-based work that our own folks can work in. And so that's why the economic development part and the relationship part is key, so that we're not just opening it up to whomever can pay the highest price, but really working with Goodman and those other places to bring in community-minded, community-focused employers who are willing to partner, say, with our educational institutions, with our existing nonprofits and business community here, because we know that Long Beach is a small town. And so the businesses that we bring in, we want to be reflective of the values that we hold, and who will bring a positive influence to one of the only open spaces left in the 5th district.
And you have 30 seconds left still, but one of the important elements of that plan is that there are some businesses there that are not conforming with what will be the zoning, and I believe they have about 10 years to gain compliance with the new zoning. So I mean, if you're elected the council person, how will you work with those businesses that maybe the clock is running?
Yeah, so we need to get started, and that's about being in a relationship. It's about having a relationship with staff and economic development to see the work that they've done up until this point to bring people into compliance. But we know that having oversight and being intentionally engaged in the process is necessary for a council member. I am looking forward to having the time to dedicate to do this work. We know it's a part-time job, but I intend to spend most of my time doing this work. And so that means engaging with staff in how we're reaching out to companies, and also the companies that are already there, making sure they're coming into compliance and figuring out the ways that the city can assist them to do that in the quickest, safest possible manner.
Okay.
It's really about paying attention.
Ian, same question to you. So 21st century business district, what does that mean to you? What does that look like to you? And I mean, as a council person, what would you like that to be for the residents and businesses that are going to be living around there or working there?
Well, I think the space beach industries are probably the most exciting big business going on in Long Beach right now. And we do want to be very supportive of that. It's funny because really my dad, many decades ago, came back to Long Beach, I believe, to work at McDonnell Douglas. And so that area has really deep roots for the economy of the city. People, there were thousands of jobs there, and it really supported Long Beach in a big way, especially as the port was winding down. But now we have a situation where it's not so much big business, and I would support accommodating those beach industries. I saw a great presentation by the CEO of Virgin Orbit at the Rotary Club spin launch. It's all very exciting, but big business generally gets taken care of pretty well in this city, and I would support them. What we need to worry about is small business, because ultimately one of the reasons they came to Long Beach is because it's a, relatively speaking, for Southern California, affordable place for their employees to live. And so it's great to have their employees living here, but we want to keep Long Beach a place where people do want to live and where people feel a sense of public safety. They have the small businesses and the amenities for a great place with culture and a sense of warmth, and not just chain stores and things like that. So it's the whole constellation. We have to support the quality of life for the resident. We have to support the feasibility to be a small business, supporting a larger business. And then, of course, we have to support those great new larger businesses, which are leading the way for the future economy, just as my father and a lot of people in the city were part of the old aerospace economy in Long Beach.
Okay, and just the same follow-up that I had given Megan, just 30, if you can, in 30 seconds, a part of modernizing the city is changing zoning, and sometimes that means that businesses that were there now can no longer be there in the future. So what's your plan for those businesses that were opposed to the Globe Master Plan, because that means that they're likely going to not be able to operate there anymore?
Well, if you need to give a business a zoning variance that is contributing in a big way to the local economy and is a great benefit to the city, then of course you want to do that. The question is, do you just want someone who's going to be a complete rubber stamp for any developer who comes in? And in the case of the Insight property at the 405 and the 710, we lose our river park. So we don't want a rubber stamp, but we do want due consideration of zoning variances.
Thank you, Ian. Staying in the airport area, and we'll go back to you, Ian, for first response on this one. City lost about 700 jobs, 200 in 2020 when Gulfstream left. They cited the lack of a customs facility at the airport, no international terminal. Would you support bringing back discussions of maybe having an international terminal at the airport?
I am opposed to that, and it's for a very clear reason, which is that we have a very unique situation in Long Beach where we have a major airport with an enormously long runway, which is tucked into residential communities, which are all around that airport. And as a result, we had decades of struggles to maintain a noise ordinance. Our initial noise ordinance in the 80s was thrown out. Then we got a new one. There was a lot of back and forth, the federal government, and in the end, we came to an understanding where we were grandfathered in under the federal law governing airport noise ordinances. So we do not want to sacrifice local control of our airport to uncaring bureaucrats thousands of miles away at the FAA. And the only way to do that is to make sure we don't have new carriers come in who we don't have any relationship with, who are willing to challenge our noise ordinance. It is considered to be legally sort of dangling by a thread, where if you lose it, it's gone forever. Local control is gone forever. And folks who have to deal with an extreme impact from the noise. And I personally experienced this because when I was in college, my mother moved to a house directly under the flight path, and she was diagnosed with cancer, going through chemotherapy. She was home during the day. A lot of people forget the elderly, people who are sick, who are home during the day under that flight path. It can be a major health consequence. So you just want to be able to preserve local control at all costs. And unfortunately, a federal terminal, inspection terminal will bring in lots of new carriers who don't have a relationship with Long Beach and who don't necessarily care about the well-being of residents.
So just real quick, Ian, so Southwest flies obviously is the largest tenant at the airport right now. They took over for JetBlue, who also left and cited the terminal issue as to why they left. But Southwest flies to Central America. They fly to a variety of islands in the Caribbean, and I mean, you could argue that we have a relationship with them right now. Are you just totally opposed to the international terminal discussion coming back to the council?
Absolutely. This is a huge issue for residents of the 5th District. They have worked on this for decades. People like our former council member, Ray Gabelich. There's no doubt that if we jeopardize our noise ordinance, it's going to be gone forever. Now, Southwest is a perfect example of a great partner in Long Beach. And we have almost no complaints right now with Southwest because they have a regional hub. They're not going coast to coast. They're not having these late night flights coming in because of weather issues on the East Coast, and they are doing great with our community.
Thanks, Ian. Megan, same question. Do you support
Sure,
an international terminal at the airport?
I support having conversations with residents and our partners at the airport to do and modernize our airport. But the #1 priority of both our public agency at the airport and our private business operators who operate on the public land is to absolutely protect the noise ordinance at all costs. So any conversations we have with private businesses and our public airport has to be in service to that noise ordinance that we've worked so hard to protect. Is unlike any other in the country. And so having those conversations about what is covered and not covered by the noise ordinance. I know there were conversations that expansion of a terminal or modernization of things at the airport might open that up. We have learned that we have been able to modernize the airport. We're currently working on a new baggage claim area. We have a new ticketing area. So we have been able to have conversations that have allowed us to modernize our airport without jeopardizing the noise ordinance. And they're two separate pieces. And so I am always open to conversations that are brought by the city and that are brought by our partners, but they're done in service to that noise ordinance first and foremost, and what's in the best interest of our residents. And we know that our residents, some of them are split. So when I'm knocking on doors, I hear about folks who were disappointed that that decision was made to not have international flights. And I also hear from folks who were glad. So there's obviously more conversation to be had that is done in a transparent and authentic way, and that we're coming to the table to speak in good faith. So I'm always open to having hard conversations. That's the job. Would I bring it to the council? No, but I'm always open to having hard conversations about what's in the best interest of the future of our city.
Well, as the new district is drawn, you guys will have you have all of the residents now around the airport. So you take all those calls, angry calls, happy calls, whatever, everything airport related is on whoever wins this race. What's new to the 5th district. I don't think anybody's ever talked about park equity when it comes to the 5th district. Previous to redistricting, you guys still have a lot of park space in the new district. But the riverfront development, the current council member is partnering with Councilman Al Austin in they talked about this on Tuesday night. The city is currently trying to see if they can purchase land, acquire land along the LA River. And I know this is outside of the district, but these are people who live in your district who may have advocated for this project in the past, and now they're, in the 5th district. So I'm just curious, given that the current council person thinks that this is something that's important to the residents, what are your feelings on this project and the estimated costs, which right now is the city says $27.5 million to develop the land, and they don't know what it's going to cost to actually purchase it, but your stance on the project, the estimated costs, and and I think this goes to Megan.
Yeah, so I am all for expanding park space on our public lands, developing it, making sure it's safe and accessible for our residents. When it comes to private land that is privately held by someone else right now, when we talk about purchasing property, I immediately am concerned for budget implications. So $27 million to develop, but we don't know what the purchase price is, could be another $15 million. The budget, there was a rosier budget projection this year, and that was passed by this council and some amazing promises made. But as we're looking down the next couple of years, we need to be really financially responsible. And while I would expand and support expanding park space on property that the city already owns, I think we'd have to take a hard look at purchasing additional property at this time. As you said, the 5th district is not necessarily park poor, but we can always make our park programming more robust. We can maintain our parks. And then we also have to partner with other districts that are park poor. And so if the priority is purchasing land that is right 5th district adjacent versus potentially 9th district or 1st district, we really have to look at the equity piece of that, which is, are those dollars better spent supporting communities that don't have the same kind of park space that the 5th district is very fortunate to have? And that is the real meaning of equity. And so I take those financial decisions really seriously, especially in light of our budget projections over the next couple of years. Again, I want us to keep maintained, clean, safe parks. Willow Springs Park is in the 5th district now. So how are we developing that space that we already have before committing funds to purchase space that we don't have yet? I think it's going to be a really, again, difficult conversation, and looking at where park space is desperately needed in our city before we make that kind of expenditure.
Ian, you've obviously been involved in this project from an advocacy standpoint. How do you feel about the project and the estimated costs? And as a council person, would you support going after that and actually developing it?
Yes, I am a board member of the River Park Coalition. It was a big focus of my life in 2021 before starting to run for city council. This is one of the areas where I am frankly most disappointed in my opponent. She seems to fundamentally not understand this issue. And it's really disappointing that she has not spoken up in support of the goals, the aims of the River Park Coalition to increase park space on the western side of town, which is so park poor compared to the east, 17 acres on the east compared to every 1 acre on the west. And the way to address that is to not constantly give away to developers land along the LA River. Now, it's true the city has let this land go. When the opportunity was there to acquire it for many years, this whole area north of the 405 by the 710 was a golf driving range, and the city could have acquired it, not with funds from the money from the general fund. That's the point. The money is there at the Rivers and Mountains Conservancy. This is state grant money. It's from Prop 1. This money has been sitting there, and this is the highest and best use of that money. We even have a council member who's a staff member on the RMC. And so the idea that it's going to come out of the general fund, that's not the point. We should have acquired this land a long time ago, but then we allow a private developer to come in and to build what they want to build, which is an RV park and a self-storage facility. They need a variance. Again, I mentioned this before, and the city council and the planning commission just comes in like a rubber stamp and gives it to them. They're not building it by right. They're taking a piece of land and using it for a different purpose, and we are allowing them to do that rather than negotiating with them to finally acquire this land for the people, which is the largest remaining vacant land along the LA River. So if you're ever going to achieve park equity and get anything like a regional park on the west side, this is where you need to start.
We'll give you a chance to respond to that, Megan, but I just wanted to follow up with Ian really quick. What happened in the past has happened. So the reality is that the city didn't acquire the land, and now these are the estimated costs. So where is the money coming from in your mind?
Well, so when the city rubber stamped this insight development last year, they did a park acquisition feasibility study, so-called. And this study was frankly not honest, because if you actually talk to people at the Trust for Public Land, the city says they reached out to them and they didn't call back. Well, that's the opposite of the case. The Trust for Public Land is this great national nonprofit that works to get the grants to the cities and actually have the park acquisition happen. And the Trust for Public Land was trying to get the city of Long Beach to buy this land for a long time, and they wouldn't do it.
So
with RMC money, I should say.
So you're looking at grants is the answer.
Yes.
Okay. Megan, he says that you fundamentally don't understand park equity. Your chance to respond.
Sure. I was actually just on a call yesterday with the Rivers and Mountains Conservancy talking about this very issue in conjunction with partnering with the school district in green space along the lower LA River and in Long Beach in general. I understand it clearly. One of the issues with this particular property is it's privately held land. We cannot change the use after the purchase. You know, it's theirs to do with within what they've been zoned to do. I know the additional piece of property that is there is also privately held. And last time I heard, the estimate was about $20 million to purchase that piece. I know RMC and the county has been working to free up some of that space. And the supervisors, I think, have dedicated a couple of acres at the top end of that property. But again, this is privately held property. It is not property that the city currently owns. And I go back to the idea of how we would fund purchasing private property for park development and be able to develop it in a financially responsible way.
Okay, and I think Anthony has the next question for Ian.
Perfect. Let's talk about homelessness. What do you think are the root causes of homelessness? And what do you propose to do that the city's not already doing to address the rising number of people who are experiencing homelessness in Long Beach? Ian?
Well, I'm just going to tag on one thing with my time to the last question, which is that you cannot acquire new park space without acquiring it from private owners. That is the entire point. So if you miss that point, then you're giving away the whole game, and we're never going to get anything like park equity on the west side. Now, with regard to the homelessness issue, this is the issue of our day, and Long Beach is really screwing this up. And it's so upsetting to me. I did the homeless count earlier this year. Megan was there too. I give her credit for being there. But what you see when you go out and you do the homeless count is something that is heart-wrenching. You've got people in all different kinds of circumstances, but they are not getting help from the city. So I talked to a couple who actually was aware of Project Room Key and the motel vouchers and everything. And they went to the multi-service center, which is very hard to get to and has limited hours. And they got there and it was so bureaucratic and difficult, they threw up their hands and they gave up. And they were back out there on the street in that 32-degree weather in February. And it's no wonder that this is happening, because the way we waste money in this city is unconscionable. The Atlantic Bridge community, which one person is running for mayor based on, is sitting empty. The warehouse that we were supposed to build this campus around, we bought for $10 million. And then we find out afterwards, it's got a lease till 2026 for cannabis. And so then we put bungalows in the parking lot and we're spending over $100,000 per bed. This is such crucial money that we get. Again, this is not city budget money, general fund, only a couple million. 98% of it is from federal, state, and county. And when, for example, the most recent acquisition was the Luxury Inn, $269,000 per room when you count the cost to acquire and to rehab that Luxury Inn, instead of providing thousands of tiny homes. So that tiny homes and a regional approach is what I'm advocating.
Okay, Megan?
Yeah, Anthony, could you clarify the question? I know you said, what are the root causes, and was it what can the city do more?
What would you propose to do that the city's not already doing?
Okay, thank you. The root cause of homelessness is people can't afford housing in this area, an incredibly tight housing market that gets tighter every year. And we know that the majority of folks who fell into homelessness last year are people who are now living in their cars, which means that for the past couple of years, they were probably 1 to 2 paychecks away from losing their housing. And then it happened. We see it in our families in the school district, folks who are moving in with friends, families who are living in their cars. So the root cause is people can't afford housing in this area. And there are complicating factors. So yes, there are mental health issues. Yes, there are substance abuse issues for folks who have been chronically homeless. But we can't paint a generic picture of who is homeless in the city, because we know it varies from children and families to veterans to single folks in between. So the city needs to continue to provide beds for transitional housing. And I will say Atlantic Farms is functioning every day. Yes, the warehouse doesn't have folks in it, but that was never part of the plan. The plan was always the temporary housing that's in the back, that is serving people every single day. So if there's 115 people there, that's 115 people who are receiving services. And when those folks have the opportunity to move on to permanent housing, then we get to service more folks in that facility. So it is functioning and being run and those services are being contracted out every single day. So I don't want people to think that we are not providing services at Atlantic Farms. We are. But we need to continue to provide space for folks when they accept services, for those who have been on the street for a while or chronically homeless, and we say, we want you to have services, and they say, yes, we have to have places for them to go, which means increasing our temporary housing beds and continuing to have an eye on permanent housing so that as those folks stabilize, get the resources that they need, they have the ability to move somewhere that is affordable, that will continue to have services to keep them in housing. We know 500,000 people in this county are on the verge of homelessness. And not only do we need to keep them from becoming homeless, we have to provide services so they stay in housing once we have them housed.
Great. I'm glad that you said housing so many times, because that's what our next question is about. So you guys were not on the council when this passed, and there's like how people say any given Sunday, anything can happen in the NFL. Any given Tuesday, the city council can vote to change an ordinance because they're set by the city council. So the city has adopted an inclusionary housing ordinance, and it only applies to the downtown area and the corridor along Long Beach Boulevard. Would you be supportive of looking at that again as a council member to maybe have it apply to more parts of the city? Because the city has a goal handed down from SCAG of making room for over 26,000 units, but a lot of the units that get built oftentimes are market rates, and as you had mentioned, people can't afford that's one of the root causes of homelessness is housing affordability. So as a council person, would you support revisiting the inclusionary housing ordinance to have it apply to more parts of the city so more affordable units can be built? I
would. I think
it goes to you first, right? Who went first the last time? I lost track.
Megan went first.
Okay.
So I would support continuing to have that conversation. I have friends who grew up in different states and different countries who lived in what they called mixed income housing. And this idea that somehow if you have a building with 100 units, that if you have 10 or 15 or 20 of those units that are below market rate, that somehow those neighbors that you bring into those units are less worthy of being housed, are less important to our community, are less critical members of our school communities and our business communities, that somehow that's different. So absolutely, we need to have conversations because the city as a whole is responsible for the housing numbers that you talked about, Jason. And if the opportunity, if someone is rehabbing a building to have that conversation, we do need to have it. It goes back to who we're painting as in need of housing. And so if you have a family of 4 that lost their housing because someone lost a job, are they less worthy of housing in different parts of the city than along the transit corridor? So I think we have to have a really compassionate conversation about what that looks like without demonizing folks who need housing that's affordable, because we know we have lost a lot of our families who have struggled and who work in our hospitality industry. We see it in the numbers in our schools that we're losing families from our lower income neighborhoods because they're being priced out. So having the opportunity for folks to live in our city, again, in our whole city, is an important conversation and a compassionate conversation we need to have. And we need to have an expectation, again, for developers to help us continue to maintain the community that we love, this diverse community that we love, and see how they can be part of those solutions. And those are important relationships to build and conversations to have.
In inclusionary housing ordinance, it requires, for viewers at home, at least right now, I believe it's 12% of new development is set aside. If you have a 100 unit building, 12 of those units have to be affordable. Would you support reopening that and maybe having that apply to more areas of the city than what it currently does?
Well, the problem is we have 2 competing goals here. We have this mandate from the state to increase units, and it's dictated by these RHNA numbers, regional housing needs assessment. And there's a lot of issues with those numbers, by the way. It's imposing a tremendous amount of density that I don't know that cities can necessarily accommodate that are built out. And the state auditor has even called into question the process of coming up with those numbers. But putting that aside, to the extent we need to comply with that, if you want to increase numbers because you have to comply with the state law, well, now you're making it more difficult to get that number of additional units because you're creating more costs for these developers to build the units. And so we're in the middle of this sort of extended experiment right now with this new inclusionary zoning ordinance, where they're going to have less of a profit margin to put in these units that they really don't want to put in. And we'll see whether they build or not. To me, this entire setup of how we do affordable housing is completely backwards, and I don't support it. So I would not support expanding the inclusionary zoning ordinance, which, by the way, the staff said it is half the city is under the ordinance and half is not, because they determined that there's no chance that they would build in the other part of the city if they were required to have that set aside. But my main issue with the way we do affordable housing is that it's like this lottery. And so a few people get a few units that are quote unquote affordable because they are restricted to below market. And everybody else who's low income, working class, who needs workforce housing, they don't get anything. But politicians get to take a photo op, a ribbon cutting, putting the shovels in, the hat, the construction hats, the whole deal, and say, oh, look, what a great thing we're doing. But most people are not being helped by it. So I would favor actually taking that money for quote unquote affordable units and spreading it out to everybody through Section 8 assistance.
Okay, and I just wanted to correct myself. It's actually 11%. 12% is too high. It's not too high. It's not what it is. So Anthony has the next question.
Okay, talking about affordable and unaffordable, let's move over to the Queen Mary. The least expensive options that we've seen for what to do with the ship range from $105 to $190 million, and that's to scrap it. Preserving it in place could cost $175 million. Dry docking it, now you're talking $200 to $500 million. Now, what we'd like to know is what your plan is for the Queen Mary. We've seen a number of consultant projections and possibilities. What would you like to do with the ship, and what's your timeline for it? And would you support using city funds to accomplish this? Ian?
Well, the fundamental issue, as with everything in Long Beach, is getting honest with the public about what we've been doing. We've been kicking the can down the road. There have been a number of cover-ups when it comes to the utter disgraceful mismanagement of the Queen Mary. Now, it's been going on for a long time, but none worse than we brought in these fly-by-night con artists called Urban Commons, who, like we always do, we've got fancy drawings and there's always this ethereal glow about what's going to happen, but it doesn't pan out because they didn't belong on a ship. They never set foot on a ship. I don't know if they've ever set foot on a sailboat, and they had no way to follow through on any of this, but they gave a good presentation and it allowed politicians to kick the can down the road. And then when our marine inspector, who had been working on the ship for 2.5 decades, Ed Probonic, blew the whistle and said, these guys aren't fixing anything. There's $300 million of deferred maintenance that they promised to fix, and they're not doing a thing. What did we do? We fired him. We fired him. That's like authoritarian. We shouldn't be doing that in this city. So there's no easy solution to the Queen Mary at this point. We've dug such a deep hole. What I would do is, number one, we've got to get honest with the voters about what led us to this point. Until we get completely honest and come clean, they're not going to trust us at all. And then we need to lay out the options with the voters. I would give the voters a ballot measure that has 3 options. So the $100 million option, which is the cheapest, just to tow it out to sea and scuttle it, a middle option, and the full preservation option of $500 million. And let the voters vote on those, because there would have to be a special parcel tax to go with it. And if 2/3 of the voters don't accept any of those options, we're going to be left scrambling to figure out what to do before the ship sinks. And that is going to affect our general fund and our core services.
I'm just curious, what if the voters picked the preserve in place option? What's the parcel tax on to cover the 500 million potentially?
Well, it would be expensive. So I'm skeptical that the voters would go for that, but you'd need a 2/3 vote. And if people are really sentimental about the ship, I do love the ship. I grew up around it. Most people tell me they want to get rid of it. So if the voters voted against all those options, we're not going to pay a tax for it. I could completely understand that. then we are going to have to take the absolute least expensive way of getting rid of this liability as soon as possible, which would be very sad, but we'd have no choice.
500 million is a lot of sentiment. How sentimental are you about the ship, Megan? What's your plan?
So, I have the picture in my wedding album by the Queen Mary. My reception was at the Reef. My brother worked on that ship and wrote history tours for that ship. So we all have some kind of connection to the Queen Mary, whether it's positive or negative. And while, and I read the posts reporting on all of it, and there are current council members that I know who are sitting on council right now who are willing to save the ship at all costs. So part of the hard decision-making that will happen with the Queen Mary is for the next council to really have conversations together about what's next. I am deeply concerned. I will go back to the economics of it. It is expensive, as you said, irrespective of the decision made. And we have to figure out where that money is coming from. But we have to look at, as those numbers increase to potentially $500 million, that's $500 million that we're not spending on 8 other districts, 9 other parts of town that are really critical. So I appreciate the idea of letting voters decide those kinds of things, but I also know that the city council is elected to do the research, to talk to the experts, and to make hard decisions when necessary. The council has made mistakes in the past, obviously, that have landed us in this place. And so we have to be critical. I intend to be really critical about what's next. As much as I like the ship as much as the next person and have a personal connection to it. It's about working with staff. It's talking to the Port Commission. I don't have access to all of that information right now. So I can't tell you what my plan would be because I don't know all of the information. I am someone who does my homework. I am someone who talks to all parties involved. And I look forward to digging into that information to be able to convey the truth to constituents and to voters, and to work with folks to solve this in a way that is most financially reasonable for the city and protects tourism, because we know that that's an issue as well. So super complicated, and I'm ready to dig in to do the work.
Well, I mean, Ian mentioned kicking the can down the road, and right now the city council is trying to punt the issue to the port, who's very reluctant to take this on because, it's hundreds of millions of dollars that the port might not be able to spend on expanding on dock rail or other things that they're trying to do to get all of those ships that are in the harbor still out and, goods into the economy. So would you, I know you say you don't know what your plan is, but I mean, would you consider or would you support trying to pass it on to the port, or do you think it's a city issue?
I think it's a city issue, but we know the port is part of the city. So if it's not, if it's a combination of responsibilities or funding, but again, going back to the economics of it, the port has work to do on greening the port, on all of those projects that you mentioned. And so 500 million out of their budget is something that I understand why they are reluctant to do that. There is no easy answer. There is only a complicated and expensive answer to how we move forward with the Queen Mary, which again has deep history, but we have to figure out a realistic future.
Okay. I think this is our last question, and we are definitely going to ask you about crime because that's one of the biggest issues in this election. People are worried about people experiencing homelessness, but also crime across all categories are kind of trending up, and the one that has trended up the most, at least year to date, according to LBPD statistics, is commercial burglaries. I think Meat and Vino is in the 5th district now, right? Cal Heights. Poor guy's had his window broken at least twice, according to his Instagram story. So how should the city address this crime? But I mean, specifically like commercial burglaries, there's lots of businesses that are having to replace glass. It's not inexpensive. They're unplanned expenses. And they've already gone through, 2 years of struggling through the pandemic. So how should the city address this? Is it more cops? Is it something else? And I believe that goes to Megan first.
Yeah, thanks for the question. And we can all agree that the crime trends are not going in the direction that we want. And specific to commercial burglary, we need more patrol, obviously. So we need to fully staff our police department with the budgeted positions that we already have. In addition, we need to make sure we're taking duties away from them that are not specifically crime related. So if there's mental health practitioners who can intervene on cases that allow law enforcement to respond to things like burglaries, then we need to be looking at that as well. But this is an opportunity also to uplift our business improvement associations, to strengthen those ties with our economic development department, to look at ways to make sure that we are supporting small businesses. So it isn't just Meat and Vino, you know, the soccer store, the Corked right there on the corner of Atlantic and Carson have all had this same issue. And it's probably similar folks. I actually live on the business corridor. My house is up against the alleyway behind, and we have cameras on our back area for safety's sake. And we know that there are things that happen along our business corridors that aren't safe. I have noticed an increase in patrol. So when I was viewing my camera reel after some graffiti, LBPD is trying to do that work. So making sure that we are a fully staffed department will help with that. But it's also bringing in multiple resources and collaborating in ways that maybe we haven't thought of before. With our business improvement districts, with folks that don't have a business improvement district, Meat and Vino, they're really working hard to potentially do a business district right there on Wardlow in the Cal Heights area. So figuring out ways to uplift that work and support it is necessary and important work that we have to continue to do. And I think working, again, with law enforcement, proud to have the support of law enforcement and the endorsement of law enforcement in this work, but it's again, thinking creatively and collaboratively in ways that we haven't done before.
Great. The nice thing about having cameras is you can also see who steals your packages off your porch, which happened to me recently. So Ian, same question to you. What is the answer to, or one of your solutions that you're proposing to kind of curb this and help obviously crime of all kinds, but I mean, specifically to commercial burglary, which has been an issue across the city recently?
Well, I'm glad to see I've already made an impact in this race, because I've been talking about this raft of disastrous crimes affecting small businesses for a year now, and my opponent has not been willing to talk about it, and I'm glad to see she's recognizing that there are some lives that are seriously affected, like the owners of Cork that had a disastrous, just lost tens of thousands of dollars of inventory smashed. The Nikki's athletic apparel, again, tens of thousands of dollars. The Supercuts, both Supercuts on Atlantic had their windows smashed in. Yeah, Meat and Vino, Al, the owner there, great guy. And he was having to go into his store at 3 a.m. to guard it until the first shift comes in. And we have in Bixby Knolls, the BKBIA, Business Improvement Association, having to pay for CSI, private security. It's like, what is going on in this city? We already have crime that is much higher than last year, and we're only part of the way through this year. We have completely got our priorities wrong. We've got to invest in public safety. We've got to restore our police force so that it can get back to a model of community policing. I was speaking to our chief Hebish not too long ago, and he was reminiscing that he thought we were on track to 1,200 officers when he started in this department, back when we had over 1,100. And now we're down to officially less than 750. You talk to officers out there, they'll say functionally it's more like 600 available. And I can tell you, I did a ride along recently. I was the second person to do the ride along, and they reinstated the program. And great officer, but you know, he told me that there's basically one patrol out there per beat at any given time. That's 10,000 residents. So if one thing happens, the other 9,999 folks better not have anything happen at the same time, or they're going to be waiting too long for it to matter. It's about priorities and not wasting our money in this city.
So short answer is you want to see at least, you know, the numbers that's been thrown out is we have 100 unfilled budgeted positions in the police department, but you're saying we need more police, maybe among other things.
Yeah, we need at least 400 more officers in this city.
Okay.
And we're only going to get there by having a top to bottom audit of this city and look at all the wasteful spending and reprioritizing our resources to core things like public safety.
Megan, you have an opportunity for a rebuttal. He said that you were reluctant to talk about commercial burglaries. I don't know if that's true, but I mean, if you want to respond to that, you can.
No, I'm very well aware, again, living on the business corridor and being engaged with communities, I'm well aware of the patterns that are happening. But there's lots of things happening. So I don't always call out all of the specific things, because we know that we have issues. If I tell people to stop stop smashing in windows that they walk by at 2 o'clock in the morning, I would do that. I can't make people stop criming, but I think it's critical that, again, we fully staff our police department. We make sure they're out doing the patrols they can. We're being creative with how we engage with our business improvement districts. And when they're not present, how we're engaging with business owners to make sure that they have the resources to feel safe. So there are all kinds of creative solutions to this work. And that also includes making sure that we're doing preventative measures around community policing, that we're funding programs, after school programs, midnight basketball programs, all of those things that we know can be preventative on the front end. But your question was specific to commercial burglary, so I was answering that question.
Oh, no, he said that you hadn't talked about it previous to today, or I don't know. I was just giving you the opportunity since he did, reference you directly.
Yeah, we've had lots of conversations around crime, but since this specific question that Anthony posed was around, or that you posed was around business corridors, I was happy to talk about it.
Right. Okay. Well, that was our final question for you guys today. You both will have another opportunity to give a closing statement, and I believe Megan went first, so that means Ian goes first with his closing statement.
Thank you so much, Jason and Anthony, and everybody at Long Beach Post for this opportunity. I'm really running because I want to give the residents of this city an alternative, somebody who really cares, who comes from a grassroots perspective, small business owner who understands cost effectiveness, and who is not constrained by these powerful interests that I see taking over the city of Long Beach. Increasingly, I feel that we are slouching towards becoming a smaller version of LA with a big city feel, a big city sense of complete dysfunction, where the residents are just feeling that they are not getting any help from a city hall which is callous and uncaring, and which has politicians who are distant and who are controlled by these big downtown interests, and they're not listening to the people, to their day-to-day needs, from crime to dealing with the homelessness issue to dealing with our streets, which are just cracking up. And we now have, after Measure A, which was supposed to fix everything, giving us the highest sales tax, we now have a $1.7 billion backlog of street maintenance, when it was only hundreds of millions before. Something is wrong with this picture. When the trees are dying in the parks, the grass is not maintained, when our air is not safe to breathe, when small businesses have so much trouble opening because they can't even get an inspector out for something, they have to wait 6 months. These are real ills which are affecting our city. But the reason I'm running fundamentally is because I so deeply believe in the residents of this city and their ability to revitalize and to have the courage to vote for somebody who's going to go against the grain sometimes, but is always going to be honest with you and going to work every day to serve your needs, to be there for you, and never kowtow to the big powerful interests downtown that would seek to corrupt our small town, old-fashioned city that used to serve our needs and isn't doing so anymore.
Megan, your closing statement, please.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you today. I am proud to have been born and raised here, raised my family here. They went to public schools here. I'm a two-time homeowner here. And for the last 8 years, I've had the opportunity to work on the ground with 108,000 constituents across this community to support and uplift students and families. It's been incredible work that I'm honored to do. It's given me public policy experience, public budgeting experience. I'm the only one in the race who has that kind of experience, and really proud to have earned a broad-based coalition of support, including the Democratic Party, including Senator Gonzalez and Mayor Garcia and the LA County Federation of Labor. And I will say, I am proud to have the support of the Federation of Labor. They represent 800,000 workers, electricians, carpenters, builders, steel workers, folks who build our city, folks who maintain our roads and our electrical infrastructure. They work in our hotels, they work in our retail establishments. So the LA County Federation of Labor represents workers, and I'm deeply proud to have their support and endorsement. I'm also proud to have the support of Long Beach Police Officers Association and Long Beach Firefighters Association, the people that we count on every day to keep us safe. And so I also have the support of the Long Beach Area Chamber of Commerce and LA BizFed. I have the support of this broad-based coalition because they know for the last 8 years I have worked hard to uplift children and families, to be solutions-oriented, and to work across ideological lines in a collaborative way to solve problems. And that's what this district needs. It needs someone who has relationships with folks. I'm the only person in this race who has endorsements by current council members. So the people will be making decisions with. So I am really proud of my record. I love this city. I am working hard every day and have been dedicated to this city since I'm a kid. So it's on the record. I'm really grateful for the support and appreciate the opportunity to talk with voters.
Great. Well, with all that talk of support, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention to everybody viewing that, we are a free newspaper, but if you want to support us, there are options to do that. By the time you view this, you might have your vote by mail ballot at home already. The election's on November 8th. It's quickly approaching. You got a few weeks to make your decisions. If you're in the 5th district, you have a choice between these two candidates who I want to thank for being here, Megan Kerr and Ian Patton. I'm sure they'll be busy for the next few weeks out on the campaign trail. In addition to, voting for a council member, perhaps you also will be able to vote for the new mayor. There are 4 citywide ballot measures that need to be decided in November. It's a really important election. So in that time, we'll be updating our election coverage, and you can check that out at lbpost.com/elections. But until November 8th, I'm Jason Ruiz, Anthony Pignataro. Thanks for tuning in.